Following the heavy silence of their first kiss, the woman looks up at the man, her expression still clouding with uncertainty and lingering shock. She gathers her courage and poses a soft, tentative question that breaks the quiet. Could we start on the bed? The man looks down at her, his posture relaxed as he leans over her, listening intently to her request. The man responds by moving even closer, his presence overwhelming and certain. He reaches out to take her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers in a firm yet gentle grip. With his other arm still braced against the wall, he looms over her, his gaze locked onto her blushing face. The woman looks away slightly, her cheeks flushed a deep pink, visibly flustered by the deliberate intimacy of his touch. In a moment of heightened sensory focus, the man's hand moves from her hand to her face. The sound effect, press, appears as he places a single finger against her lower lip, tracing the edge of her mouth with a slow, provocative motion. A small speech bubble containing only an exclamation mark underscores her silent, breathless reaction to this bold gesture. The man finally speaks, his voice likely low and steady. A slight knowing smile plays on his lips as he looks down at her with an expression of dark affection. He acknowledges her earlier request with a simple, decisive phrase, "As you wish." His eyes are sharp and focused, indicating that he is now fully in control of the direction the night will take. The scene culminates in a close-up of the man as he prepares to follow through on his promise. He continues to cradle her face and neck, his large hand emphasizing the physical difference between them. His smile remains charming yet predatory as he leans in to bridge the final gap between them once more. The soft, sparkling lighting around them highlights the romantic and charged atmosphere of the room. The scene opens with a soft, heavy plop, the sound of a body hitting a plush surface. A cascade of long, wavy, rose-colored hair fans out across the white sheets like spilled ink, vibrant against the pale bedding. The dramatic spread of her hair signals a moment of surrender, framing her head as she is pressed down into the mattress, marking the beginning of a tense, intimate encounter. The perspective shifts to a close-up of the two characters. A dark-haired man looms over the woman, his face dangerously close to hers. He wears a confident, almost predatory smirk, his eyes locked onto her as he whispers, "Now, may I continue?" The woman lies beneath him, her face flushed with a deep crimson blush. Her expression is a complex mixture of shock, hesitation, and a dawning realization that she has lost control of the situation. The man's dominance is fully realized as he pins her down. One of his hands is firmly planted near her head, while the other grips her waist, pulling her body flush against his. The woman's hand is balled into a tight fist against the pillow, a sign of her inner turmoil and nervousness. The physical tension between them is electric, highlighted by the glittering, hazy atmosphere of the room. The focus narrows onto the man's face, catching a rare moment of his own vulnerability. His eyes are lowered, shadowed by his dark lashes, and a faint tint of pink touches his cheeks. Despite his outward confidence, his internal monologue reveals a sense of gravity. "I'm really about to do this." He is fully aware of the line he is about to cross, and for a split second, the weight of the moment hangs heavy in the air. The narrative tension reaches its breaking point with a devastating revelation. As the camera focuses on the man's torso and the closeness of their bodies, the woman's inner voice completes the thought that changes everything. The realization hits with the force of a physical blow. She is engaging in this forbidden intimacy with none other than my sister's boyfriend. This final thought recontextualizes the entire scene, turning a moment of passion into a scandalous betrayal. A heavy silence fills the room as the woman stares blankly at the ceiling, her long, rose-colored hair fanned out against the pillows. Despite the physical intimacy of the moment, her eyes are clouded with a deep, haunting uncertainty. A single bead of sweat rolls down her temple as she confronts the gravity of her choices, her internal voice whispering the question she can no longer ignore. Is this really the right thing to do? The conflict between her desires and her conscience is laid bare in her hesitant gaze. The tension manifests physically in a sharp, sudden movement. A hand reaches out, fingers digging into the fabric of a shirt or the softness of skin with a desperate squeeze. It is a gesture of both longing and anxiety, a silent plea for grounding in a moment that feels like it's spinning out of control. The force of the grip reflects the intensity of the emotions they are both trying to navigate. The scene shifts into a grainy, almost dreamlike memory or a simultaneous moment of passion. A light-haired man is seen leaning over a woman, their bodies close in an intimate embrace. Above them, a dark speech bubble carries a confession that feels both tender and treacherous. "I love you, Na-young." The use of her name makes the betrayal feel personal and permanent. The scene opens with a close-up of a man, his expression heavy and eyes closed, as if lost in a moment of illicit intimacy. Behind him, the stark shadow of a doorway reveals a silent observer, a woman standing in the hall, witnessing a scene that shatters her world. The man's voice, captured in a dark speech bubble, carries a cruel longing. "If only So-young were as gentle as you." As the perspective shifts, we see a lone figure, perhaps So-young herself, lying perfectly still on a raised platform, looking small and isolated against a vast, cold background. The dialogue continues to twist the knife, revealing the man's deep resentment and the stinging comparison he makes between the two sisters. "Your older sister's cold as stone. Even in bed, I feel nothing with her." The scene begins with a chilling lack of empathy. High above a framed wedding portrait, a speech bubble rings out with mocking laughter. The voice dismissively agrees with a previous insult, casually dehumanizing the woman in question with a cold, "Ah, yeah, she's kind of like that." The narrative lens shifts downward to focus on a beautiful wedding photograph, showing a bride and groom smiling warmly at each other amidst cherry blossoms. However, the sentiment is immediately shattered by a brutal caption overlaid on the image. A voice asks rhetorically, "Right? I thought she was a corpse or something," highlighting the deep-seated contempt hidden behind their public facade of happiness. The atmosphere turns dark and heavy, the background fading into a grainy obsidian void. The dialogue becomes a series of sharp, invasive questions that probe into the trauma of a failing relationship. One bubble asks, "Did Dong-sung beat you?" Followed immediately by the soul-crushing inquiry, "Cheat on you?" The focus shifts to an older man, his face etched with severe lines of anger and uncompromising authority. He looms over the scene, his brow furrowed as he barks a command that places corporate interest above personal suffering. He declares with absolute finality, "Whatever the reason, you have no right to say no to Dong-eum Group." The confrontation reaches its peak as the older man's aggressive posture is fully revealed. With an icy glare and a mouth set in a hard line, he points a finger directly at the person he is berating. It is a gesture of total dominance, showing a man who views his family members not as people, but as chess pieces in a cold corporate game. The scene opens with a tight, intimate close-up of her eyes. Her gaze is downward, heavy with a mixture of hesitation and a deep, underlying sorrow. The subtle blush on her cheeks isn't one of simple shyness, but of a feverish internal conflict. In this moment of silence, the world seems to shrink down to the space between her and the person standing before her. Her eyes lift slightly, gaining a glimmer of painful determination. The internal monologue reveals the gravity of her situation. This is the only choice I have left. It is the look of someone who has been backed into a corner by life, realizing that the path ahead is dangerous, yet unavoidable. The jagged edges of the speech bubble emphasize the sharp, sudden clarity of her desperation. The focus shifts to him, a man whose presence is both captivating and perilous. As he leans in, his expression is unreadable, yet intense. The finality of her decision is laid bare in the text, to start an affair with him. This isn't just a choice, it is a transgression, a leap into the unknown that will change the course of her life forever. The tension breaks into physical action. He reaches out toward her, his hand moving through the soft, hazy light of the room. The sound effect, reach, punctuates the air, signaling the closing of the distance between them. There is a sense of gravity to his movement, as if he is claiming the choice she has just mentally made. Finally, we see her, lying back, her long, wavy hair sprawling across the white sheets like silk. Her expression is a complex blend of vulnerability and defiance. She looks up at him, her lips slightly parted, and delivers the decisive blow to her own conscience. With the simple, breathy command, "Go on," she invites the chaos in, surrendering to the path she felt forced to take. The scene opens with a striking visual of her lying back, her long crimson-hued hair fanning out across the pillows. Her eyes are wide and filled with a complex mixture of fear and longing, her cheeks flushed with a deep, unmistakable heat. In a gesture of both vulnerability and surrender, she reaches her hand upward, her fingers slightly curled as if beckoning or seeking an anchor in the storm of her emotions. The perspective shifts to a close-up of him, his dark, sharp eyes narrowing as he watches her every move. He is a man accustomed to reading others, and in this moment, he sees past her trembling exterior. His internal monologue confirms what he sees. So she's made up her mind. He recognizes that she has crossed a mental threshold from which there is no turning back. The physical distance between them finally vanishes. Her hand makes contact with his face, the sound effect touch echoing the significance of the moment. Her voice is barely a whisper, yet it carries the weight of an urgent command. Hurry! It is the plea of someone who can no longer bear the agonizing tension of anticipation. In an intimate close-up, we see the true state of her composure. As her fingers grip the fabric of his shirt and brush against his skin, they are visibly shaking. The small, jagged lines around her hand illustrate a profound physical tremor. While her words were demanding, her body betrays the sheer terror and adrenaline coursing through her as she commits to this path. The sequence concludes not with an image, but with his final haunting observation. The jagged speech bubble pulses with the intensity of his thought, asking me to hurry even though she's trembling. He is struck by the contradiction of her behavior, how she is possessed by enough desperation to push him forward, even as her entire being shakes with the gravity of her choice.